What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's going on with the overall markets and why tomorrow is going to be another important day as we have CPI coming out, and also what the news is saying about the Model Y, because I have more updates for you guys. But before I break into all this information, before I talk about what's happening with Tesla and what's going on with the share price for all these different tickers, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's happening with Tesla. Looking at Tesla, we got this nice little pump and gap up in the morning as we entered this supply zone before we got this nice rejection right over here. And once we rejected, we got our back test right over here, which is another liquidity grab, which is where they start to trigger some stops very, very close to this level right here. Before we saw Tesla come right back down. And the reason why Tesla came down was because of the overall market. The market had this nice little pump and dump today, and also because of some news that came out about the Model Y. I actually have another update for you guys about the Model Y. I'm going to talk about this later in the video. But if you want more details about it, you guys can check out my previous video, my second to last video, if you're interested. But anyways, I want to talk about something affecting the markets, and that's going to be CPI for tomorrow. I'm going to break down how it could affect Tesla later on too. So what's going on with CPI? Why is this so important? As a reminder, it's coming out an hour before the market opens at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're expecting a very, very big drop. Now, the reason for this may have been because of the adjustments that were made last year to the way CPI was calculated. So this is why for the CPI year over year, we're expecting this drop. We'll see if we get something like that, but I just want to break down more context about it. So for tomorrow, we're expecting CPI year over year for January to be between 2.9 and 3.1%, or around 3%. Now, I can't promise we're going to get those numbers. We'll just have to wait and see. On top of this, the previous CPI report was at 3.4%. That's going to be quite a drop if we get that. But month over month, they're expecting a 0.2% change. It's pretty much the same as what we got last time. For core CPI year over year, we're expecting around 3.7%. That's a slight decrease from 3.9%. And then for month over month, we're expecting 0.3%. So out of all of these, what do I think is going to pan out? Let me show you guys the chart for CPI. This is the chart for CPI based off the data. So as you can see, the purple line right here, this is for core CPI, all items without food and energy. It's very clear that this has been downtrending, and it's very consistently downtrending. There are almost no times where this thing actually increased. So there's a very good chance that core CPI is going to be very close to expectations and quite decent in my opinion. So I'm pretty confident this is going to be decent. The 3.7% core CPI should be fine. But what's a little bit more complicated is going to be CPI for all items. That's the blue line you see right here. Now notice how this thing was dropping and dropping and dropping. And once we got that increase, we got a little increase starting in July. So if you look at June to July, there's a little increase right here, and this is what triggered the market to like really start to sell off during that period in August. Because remember, the data is delayed. For tomorrow, the January data report's coming out. We're in mid-February right now, so it takes some time to get the data. So with that being said, this period lasted about a couple of months of increases, right? We got this increase in July, then August, September was kind of flat before it came back down. We just got one increase in December. So the question is, are we going to creep up again in January, or are we about to come back down? That's something I'm not too sure about, to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with everyone. I don't know what's going to happen, and I just want to be very careful. We got a little increase in December. If this continues in January, that's going to be bearish for the markets. So you need to be very careful. But if not, if we meet the expectations, it's going to be bullish. We'll just have to wait and see. But right now, there's a possibility CPI could increase, especially looking at the new orders and other pieces of data from manufacturing. So you want to be very careful. We'll have to be very careful with all items CPI. Core should be fine, but all items is where we're going to be watching it carefully. Right now, there's a 15% chance the Fed is going to cut by 25 basis points, and there's a 85% chance that the Fed is going to essentially keep rates the same during the March FOMC meeting. This could be adjusted based off CPI, so make sure you pay attention to this. This is going to affect the markets as well. Uh, I typically look at the oil data and try to compare like crude, but that doesn't matter in this case because of the fact that there were adjustments being made. We're expecting a big drop, and I can't really predict that solely based off crude, which is why it doesn't even matter at this point. So I just want to be open minded about CPI. I'll talk about the numbers relative to the share price of Tesla and all these in just a few minutes. Just a few more stuff I want to go over. For today, we had Monday.com in the morning. I went over this. We basically met expectations on EPS and revenue, but we ended up missing on the revenue outlook, which caused Monday.com to come sinking down. Besides that, I'm not going to focus as much on these earnings, not really that significant. But for Tuesday, we have Shopify coming out, and then we have Coca-Cola. That's going to be a big one for Tuesday. And then after the market closes, we have Airbnb, we have Robinhood, we have Lyft all coming out. So I'll be watching those very carefully, especially Airbnb. Now, with that being said, later on during the week, we have DraftKings, we have Coinbase, we have Roku coming out, and those are going to be some big ones for the week, especially Coinbase. So I'll talk about the share prices for Coinbase and a few others a little bit later. So far, things are very interesting. Now, what's going on with Tesla? I did talk about this early in the morning about how Tesla announced a temporary discount on the Model Y. I also talked about this yesterday. I mentioned that we should have expected Tesla to see a little pullback, and that's what happened to Tesla, right? We got the little pullback. I was hoping we'd see it kind of rebound a little bit and try to hold up. It tried to do that. So it basically dropped here and then it rebounded temporarily, which is what we were expecting, but then it continued to sink. And I warned you guys about the downside. If we lost 190, expect 188 to 187.5, and that's what happened. Why did Tesla drop more? Because of the overall market and also because of this news. Tesla is saying the Model Y refresh will not be launching in North America in 2024, which is killing some hype from lots of these investors. It is what it is, guys. There's not really much I could say about that, but I don't really think that Tesla's in the best of positions to launch production of Model Y Juniper because they have so much other stuff that's coming out. They're preparing for the next new model that's coming out, the next gen. We have the new Highland variant that came out for the Model 3s, and many people were expecting them to do the same thing for the Model Y, but that's the reason why Tesla's kind of letting them know that that's not going to be the case. Tesla's also focusing on improving the capabilities and the production uh, uh, systems and such for the Cybertruck and such. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to do this. I want to show you guys this. I missed this in my previous video because I didn't really see this in many articles yet, but it just came out. So Tesla gave us more clarity about the situation. The Model Y refresh talking points. Tesla said, "We heard your feedback that some customers are waiting to place their Model Y order as they anticipate a similar refresh to basically come out as that of the Model 3. But it's important that we communicate transparently that there is no refresh for the Model Y launching this year. There is no better time for customers to start driving the world's best selling vehicle. In addition to the $7,500 federal tax credit at point of sale for eligible customers, they provided lots of incentives and such." So Tesla made it clear, guys, this year, 2024, do not expect a Model Y refresh. And we saw Tesla plunge as soon as this news came out. So it is what it is, guys. Bad news comes out. There's not really much we could do about it. But the best thing we could do is just react and to be open minded about the future. So we have 95 million in volume. We're dropping on low volume. It's not that bad. And then on top of that, I just want to call out that the short volume is currently at about 49%, nothing too crazy. There's nothing changing in terms of major analyst ratings. I'm not really seeing any changes. Price price ratio tried to bounce. It's coming down a bit as Tesla lost some strength. And then none of this really matters in terms of seasonality and such, except for this. I mean, we sometimes see Tesla being more volatile around like 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then also at 2 p.m. until the second to last hour of the day. We tend to see more volatility during those periods. Besides that, that's pretty much it for Tesla. We also have strong financial estimates nonetheless. But I can't really talk too much about what we should be expecting tomorrow in terms of price action and with high like certainty and such, because it's going to depend a lot on CPI, and that can be very tricky. So what do we see for Tesla going on right here? Basically, core CPI should be fine, but for CPI for all items year over year, it's very tricky to predict. I mean, I really can't make any promises. If it's anything above 3.5%, that's going to be very bearish. If it's at 3% flat, that could be a little bullish. Or if it's below like 3%, that's going to be very bullish. I don't know, guys. I really don't know. I will tell you that if we get good numbers, right? If we get something that's low or close to the expectation of 3%, it's bullish for Tesla in the markets. If we get high numbers, if CPI is too hot, it's going to be bearish. So a hot CPI is going to bring Tesla basically, if CPI is basically bearish, Tesla could lose 187.5. And if we lose that, 184 is coming, followed by 182.5. If Tesla is bullish after CPI comes out, it's going to be pushing for 190.5, 192, at least 192 in my opinion. Now, we have a falling wedge like pattern that does suggest that Tesla could bounce, but please know that patterns alone are not everything. We just have to be open minded on this one. I do think it might attempt to bounce, at least based off technicals alone, but CPI is going to be the biggest factor. I can't predict that. I'm not some kind of fortune teller. I don't know what's going to be. So we just have to wait and see tomorrow morning and be prepared for either possibility. But the chart of Tesla is showing some weakness. We could get a little bounce though after this big sell off, at least based off technicals alone. But we'll have to see what CPI causes. Now, SPY is looking very interesting. Let me just say that SPY, from a technical standpoint, is looking a little bit weaker right now, especially on the 4-hour time frame. SPY is showing some weakness, and there is a risk of it coming down. But nothing is guaranteed because you can't rule out the possibility that institutions are bringing the market down just to buy it up at these low prices to push it back up. Nothing is guaranteed. So, what do I see for SPY? If we're bullish on SPY, I want to see this thing push back up towards 503.5. And if you break that, 505 is coming if we get a low CPI. If CPI is hot above 3.5%, the rug pull is coming and SPY is going to be making its way down and below 500 to 498. And if 498 fails us, we're going to be sinking to 496, unfortunately. That's where this imbalance happens to be. So honestly, guys, I can't promise anything. I do want to note that SPY is looking a little bit weaker right here. It's showing weakness in the chart. It looks like it could drop more, but technicals are not everything. And just know that even though there is this risk, be open-minded with CPI just to be safe. For the QQQ, right now the QQQ has two possibilities. We have an imbalance up here, which could fail. If we're bullish, we want to break out from CPI. If we get a good push, the yellow trend line is going to be retested around 438, and eventually 440 is coming. If we're bearish, we're going to be looking for a big drop towards 432 to 430, all the way down there. So, with that being said, um, I just want to make it clear that the QQQ is kind of in the middle right now. It's kind of like in the mid 430s, like 435. Either this thing is going to get launched back up closer to 440, or we're about to get a rug pull closer to 430. It's really that simple. There's 432 as a support, then we have like 429 to 430. So I'm in the middle with this. The chart is looking a little bit weaker. It looks like it could establish like a lower high, then start dropping. But just to be safe, we'll have to wait and see what CPI gives us. For Nvda, we're looking, in my opinion, in the middle as well, because we're kind of like halfway between this low and this low. If you're bullish, you're going to be looking at this imbalance at 736. If you're bearish, you're going to be looking at this key support at 707. I made this big. I made this trend line thicker. So look at the green line here. We have to hold this green line. If we lose this, we're going to be sinking to 700. There's going to be a risk of bigger downside. So if we lose this green line, we turn more bearish. It all depends on CPI. The chart right now is looking indecisive, kind of in the middle. It's showing some weakness, but it's kind of stuck between these levels. So we'll just have to wait and see. Now, I want to call out Apple. Apple's very, very interesting to me. Apple looks very interesting. Here's why. When you look at Apple, Apple has a left shoulder, the head, and the right shoulder. We called out the head and shoulders. And what happened? It sank. It lost 188. It's looking bearish. And look at where we bounced at. Look at where we're holding 186.5. What does this mean in context? It's very simple. What this means is Apple is favoring the bears a lot more. It looks like it's going to be sinking towards 185. Now, technicals are not everything, patterns are not everything. It depends on CPI. If CPI is good, we could launch back up towards 190. If we get a bad CPI, we're going to be sinking to 185 and eventually 182. So it looks more bearish, though. I want to call that out. It does look more bearish. It looks like it's favoring 185. So it does favor that, but just to be safe, we'll have to wait and see. So I want to make it clear I'm open minded for anything, especially for Apple, but there is a risk of it coming down looking at the pattern and such. Let me just go over a couple more before I end the video. And let me talk about Tesla again. So Tesla is showing some weakness on the 4-hour. It's still looking kind of weak. Looks like it could sink more. It lost a 20 EMA. But just to be safe, I mean, we'll have to see what CPI causes. I mean, technicals are just one factor. They're obviously not everything. And there's a lot of manipulation that typically happens on CPI days. So for Rivian, I'd say that if we're bullish, we're going to be looking for a 16.8. If we're bearish, we want to be watching for 15.9 and 15.5. In my opinion, we look kind of flat, kind of like range bound, but we're turning a little bit more bearish right here. So it does favor the downside a little bit more, but it all depends on CPI, so I can't promise anything. On SoFi, if we're bullish, watch 8.5. If we break that, I could see it getting very close to $9. If we break above this, this is bullish. The trend is still bullish. The chart is still looking bullish. But if we're bearish after CPI, we get a temporary drop. Expect $8. If we lose that, we could sink more. So the chart still looks bullish. CPI could cause a temporary drop to 8 or a big push back up to 9. We'll be watching that very, very carefully. For the Russell 2000, we look bullish. On the 4-hour time frame, we look bullish. If we keep breaking out, I think 205 is coming. But if we turn bearish, watch 200 and 198. Right now, with the nice uptrend that is perpetuating, it looks pretty good. But we'll see what CPI brings us because it could always turn us around the other way. Honestly, guys, it depends on CPI, but the chart still looks strong. So I just wanted to call that out. The chart is looking good, but CPI is going to be another factor. For Microsoft, if we lose support right here at 414, I think 410 is coming. If we turn bullish, we're going to be looking for a push towards 420. We look like we're going to sink towards 410. It looks a little bit more bearish, but just to be safe, we'll see what CPI causes. Shopify is sinking. I'm going to be watching 88. If we turn bearish after CPI, 85 is coming. If we turn bullish, we're going to be bouncing towards 92.5 at the very least. For AMD, if we turn bearish, AMD is going to be sinking towards 168, then 165. If we turn bullish, you want to see it break above 172 and then get back up to 175. The chart looks a bit more bearish. Looks like it might sink towards 168 at the very least, but it also depends on CPI. So the chart is not everything. CPI also matters. If CPI pushes the VIX up towards 14.29, we break that. That could be a breakout on the VIX. So be very careful. If we push a little bit, and then we end up projecting and coming back down to fill this gap, that means the market could end up getting a bounce soon. So we're going to be watching the VIX here. We have this big gap to fill. So I'm still open-minded. I'm not convinced the VIX is going to break out yet. We just have to wait and see. The dollar is kind of indecisive, not really giving us much information. It's just trading sideways. Coinbase looks bullish overall. If we break 150, watch 152, then 155. If we break 155, I think 163 is coming next. If we're bearish, you want to see it return to about 145. If we lose that, we have this imbalance at 140.9. So it all depends on CPI. The chart still looks strong. It's still holding up nicely, but we'll see what CPI causes. Google's looking a little bit weaker. We're going to be watching 148, then 146 below that. And then if you want to be bullish, you want to see it break 150, then 153. The chart looks like it's going to sink towards 148 and then 146, but just to be safe, we'll have to wait and see how things go. So I'm still open-minded nonetheless, but we'll have to wait and see. Don't forget, guys, it's very important to be prepared for what CPI can bring us. For Amazon, if we lose, let me see, 171.6, it's going to be sinking towards 168. If we bounce off that, it's going to be pushing towards 175 again, in my opinion. So it is looking kind of weaker, though. It looks like it's going to sink towards 168, so be prepared just to be safe. And then for Meta, 166 is going to be tested. If we lose this, we have an imbalance way down here. I think it could get very close to, did I say one? I meant 466. Excuse me, guys. 460 is coming next if we lose that, so be careful. That's where we have this imbalance. If we bounce off of it, then 475 is coming again, so we'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, that's it for the video. Please know that some charts, a lot of them from Tesla to SPY to the QQQ to Google, they're showing a weakness right now. They're showing some weakness. So please be open-minded. But don't forget that the charts are not everything. This could always be a trap. And just because there's some weakness, it depends on CPI. So I wish I could give you guys the answers. I don't know what's going to happen. I just have to wait and see. And that's the best thing I could tell you. There's no one on YouTube that's going to tell you if the market's going to pump or dump. No one truly knows. Okay, no one truly knows because none of us are fortune tellers. None of us have the blueprints, the script for CPI or anything like that. So that means be open-minded, be reactive, be prepared, and we will see what happens going into tomorrow. Okay, so for Tesla, unfortunately, we were not free from the bad news. It just keeps coming out. But I'm still going to keep my head held high because Tesla has so much potential for the long term. I'm still very bullish. I'm not going to let this change my view. Tesla in the market is the moon because the long term is still very bright despite what we're seeing for the short term. Get ready for CPI tomorrow morning before the market opens. And get ready, guys. Do what you have to do. And thank you all so much for listening one more time. Thanks again, and peace out.